Okay, welcome everyone to episode 2 of our show. Thank you to all of you who showed love to our first episode. I'm Josh Valdez. I cover baseball, basketball, and football for different sites, Athlon, Clutch Points, Roundtable, which is what this podcast is for. This is my colleague Joey. Joey, say what's up.
What's up, y'all? If you don't know who I am, my name is Joey Mistretta. I cover the NBA and MLB as well, and happy to be talking some ball here.
Yeah, so last week we focused a lot on the Orioles and Pete Alonso and what that meant for the division in the league at large. This week we wanted to take our talent, not our talents, our attention more to the AL Central. Um, Start off with the Kansas City Royals. They have been one of the most interesting teams of the entire MLB offseason so far. They haven't made a Pete Alonso kind of move, but they've made quite a few, and they're linked to Jarren Duran and Brendan Donovan on the St. Louis Cardinals. Um, I'm a Yankees fan. I've watched quite a bit of Jarren Duran. It's kind of, killing us, honestly, playing for the Red Sox, constantly stealing bases, super athletic, great contact hitter. Um, Joey, I don't know how much you've watched Brendan Donovan. I haven't watched him a ton, but which one of them do you think will be a better get? Or honestly, would either one of them make sense for the Royals?
Yeah, I think in all reality, both players do make sense. I think you look at Brendan Donovan, he was an all-star last year. He's very versatile. He can play multiple infield positions. He can play the outfield if you need him to. But Duran has the higher ceiling, but he is a player who features that power potential. He can steal bases as well. He can play some good defense for you. So I think if you're looking at who the better get is, I'd probably lean towards Duran. But Donovan, also a really good player. You really can't go wrong either way.
I think Donovan, he looks pretty good. I mean, it seems like he hits almost like 280 at least every season. The thing is that I think Duran is just a little bit more athletic. He's just really quick. And, I mean, he's also really good on defense. I just think that Jarren Duran is like more of an all-around player. Um, so if I had to choose between the two, I'd go with Duran. But it's also right, it's kind of like, what do you have to give up to get them, right? That's also a part of what front offices have to kind of weigh. If you could get maybe Donovan on with more of like a better value deal for you if you don't have to give up as much, right? Whereas Duran maybe will be at a higher price because so it's just kind of like I think Duran's better, but that's only part of the equation. So I understand if the Royals went for Donovan instead. But either way, I think that it's just great bottom line that they're being so aggressive this offseason. Right? They already extended Michael Garcia. Um, they've already made a trade, right? So it's really I think they're getting a lot better. Um, and I think that the Royals were definitely going to challenge for the playoffs again this season.
Yeah, and the other note on that too is in that report by Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic, he said the Royals they may need to move another big league player to make room for a Duran or a Donovan. So you could see the Royals realistically trade like a starting pitcher in a week and then go and get Duran or Donovan. So it's kind of an interesting buyer seller mentality for the small market Royals. But I think that's what you're going to see first. The first domino to fall is that trade of a pitcher potentially from the Royals, and then they can go and get one of these all-star caliber players.
Yeah, right. And Kansas City, they just traded for a Matt Strahm from Philly, right? They've already been active on the trade market, so it's kind of like we know that, if there's reports that they're linked to more guys looking into more trades, it should be taken seriously because they literally just did a deal. So they're being active. And I think it would make sense to trade a pitcher for a position player. I think that one of their biggest issues was they just weren't effective enough offensively outside of their big guys. Like they had Witt, Pasquantino, Salvi Perez, Michael Garcia, but I think a lot of the role players weren't hitting enough this past season, and that kind of came back to bite them. So if you can get a guy like Duran or Donovan who can be a reliable bat, I mean, Jarren Duran, he only hit 256 this past season, but I mean, he has like at least 20 stolen bases almost every season. He's just super athletic, great on D. So. And they just need they just need more of that in the outfield, right? The Royals outfield hasn't been that great recently. I think it's been one of their weak spots. So if they can trade a pitcher, a position they might have more better players in than the outfield, it kind of makes sense because it'll help even your team out.
Absolutely. And I think you look at the Royals, how do you build a contender? And for so long, it was Salvador Perez. That was your guy. And now it's Bobby Witt Jr. Like he's the future of that franchise. So the Royals have their face of the franchise. How do you build around him? If you go and get a center fielder like Duran, then you're really good up the middle, meaning catcher, shortstop, center field. You got Salvi, you got Bobby, and you get Duran. That's a heck of an outfield. Now Donovan again can play second base, can play third base. They have Garcia, so that won't happen. Can play any outfield position. So he's more versatile. So I do think though, like we both agreed on, Duran's probably the guy you want to get. They're similar ages, both all-star caliber. And even though Duran had not as good of a season last year as compared to Donovan, the ceiling unquestionably, I think Duran features the better ceiling.
Yeah, and again, it's just like if you have to give up like multiple valuable assets for Duran, if I'm the Royals GM, that might be where I'm more reserved. Like, okay, maybe it's just better value to get Donovan just because maybe he won't cost as much, or maybe he will because Donovan had a better season, like you said. So we're not on the inside, like like getting all the trade market intel, like like the GMs are. So that's where it's hard to say, but I think if you can get one of those guys without giving up a ton of assets, you maybe give up a pitcher and a prospect or something and some cash consideration, something like that. Something that's not going to be like going to really burn you if the move doesn't work out. As long as you're kind of doing it from that perspective, I think either one of them will work. It's more of like, what do you have to give up? And then maybe can you re-sign them once they come in, make sure that they stick around for a while. So lots of factors, but I think that bottom line, like I said, the Royals are aggressive, and I think that they're a team to be reckoned with in the AL Central, but also the AL at large.
I agree. I mean, the AL Central is honestly, it's wide open. I know it's getting a little better, but Cleveland, like, they can't hit. Detroit, they might trade Scooble. Chicago, they're not good yet. Minnesota has a lot of question marks. So that AL Central, wide open right now. The American League, yeah, they could compete in the American League once the playoffs begin, but priority number one, win the division, go from there.
Yeah, and speaking of the division, right? The Twins are having a weird offseason. They changed their ownership structure. They basically sold 20% of their team to three different minority partnership groups, some finance partners and stuff like that. They also are changing their like controlling owner from it was the overall it was the Polat family, but one of the brothers is going to replace the other as like the main guy making decisions. Um, but in terms of the players, they're not really doing much of consequence. So that is concerning for them because they're coming off of another non-playoff season. They weren't great this past season. They traded Carlos Correa. Byron Buxton was almost their whole offense, right? And you got to solve that. Something we were talking about is should they trade Joe Ryan, maybe for some bats, right? He's one of their few really valuable assets. Um, and he's been one of their best pitchers for a while now, and I think it's worth looking at if you can get some bats in there to help Buxton. Because again, it's like you're not going to really do much even in a division wide open as AL Central, you're not going to do much if Buxton. I mean, he led him in almost every category last season. And that doesn't really work unless you're the Yankees with like Aaron Judge, where it's like he's the best player in the game, and then you also have other good hitters. It's like the Twins, where it's like it was kind of a one-man band, honestly, in the lineup. So uh, I would look into trading Ryan because he's a valuable guy and you can get multiple assets maybe in return for him, so you kind of can build out your depth a little bit better.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. And the reason we're discussing this is because recently Ken Rosenthal was on a podcast and he mentioned that, we know that Tampa Bay Rays recently traded Boz to the Baltimore Orioles. And the Orioles gave up four prospects in that trade and a draft pick, which for Shane Boz coming off a down season last year, Ken Rosenthal just wondered, like, well, if they can get four prospects for Boz, what can the Twins get for a guy who was an all-star last year and is one of the best pitchers in baseball? So early in the offseason, Joe Ryan was mentioned as a trade candidate. And then as the offseason moved forward, the Twins were like, no, we're not trading anybody. It was reported that Buxton, Ryan, they're not getting traded. They don't want to rebuild. But now with this Boz trade, Rosenthal just posed the question, like, do the Twins reconsider and say, hey, we'll listen on Ryan. If you blow us away with a trade offer, we might do it. As for the question that we're discussing, with our opinions, should they trade him? I think personally, you need to at least consider it because the Twins, even if you win the AL Central, right now they're not good enough to win the World Series. There's just no way that's going to happen unless everything goes their way and they get really lucky, which we have seen like the Nationals in 2019, but that's pretty rare. So I think right now, like you got to consider trading Joe Ryan. If you can get 4 or 5 really good prospects, not only do you jumpstart your rebuild, you can still build around Byron Buxton. You don't have to fully rebuild. Like you said, bring in some bats, build around Buxton, maybe trade for some prospects who are starting pitchers, and before you know it, you might be a legitimate contender within a couple of seasons. So I think, yeah, like you got to consider it.
Yeah, it's when a team needs to rebuild, you got to like trade the valuable assets you do have to sort of build more depth for the future. And the thing with Buxton is that he's being very loyal. He's like, yeah, I want to stay. I'm not going anywhere. He really wants to stay there. And this is something, this is something that I've written about for Roundtable. It's like, okay, that's great for them that he wants to stay because if you have Buxton in the building, you at least have like a star that you can build around. So that gives you a
Mhm.
starting point. But you can't just like kind of settle for that and be like, okay, he'll stick around no matter what. Like you still got to be able to like try to build a competitive team, or else he might change his mind and lose patience, and then he will leave in free agency. So when his contract's up. So I think, Joe Ryan is a really solid pitcher. And like you said, if the Rays could get that much of a haul for Shane Baz, like I think Joe Ryan is better than Shane Baz. So, I mean, they could get a whole bunch of stuff. They could get like MLB players and prospects, um, that will help them on both fronts, like their current roster and building their farm system. So, um, it would be interesting. I mean, pitching is so valuable, right? I mean, it's you just need a ton of pitching all the time. You can never have enough. They get hurt a lot, right? It's the most important position. So I think that it just makes so much sense for the Twins to do it. And honestly, like if they don't do it, and if they just keep like Joe Ryan and like, Pablo Lopez, their top two starters, it's like, yeah, you'll have a couple good starters. You'll have Buxton. But if they don't make any major moves, I don't see how they're going to finish above 500, unless they get really lucky, like you said. So I think they have to do something on that scale.
No, 100%. And like we said, even if they get lucky and they win the AL Central, they're not going to reach the World Series. Like there's too many good teams to get there. And even if they do, you got the Dodgers probably waiting for you. Could the Dodgers lose in the playoffs? Sure, but probably not. Like we're being honest, the Dodgers are such a good team, and you're not going to beat the Dodgers unless again unless you get really lucky. So I don't think you want to lean on luck. You want to build a roster that you truly think can contend. And one other note I wanted to make about Joe Ryan as well is if you trade him and the team that acquires him may say, okay, we get him for a couple of years under team control. The thing about it is compared to free agency pitchers right now, like Framber Valdez, Ranger Suarez, guys like that, you're competing with other teams for those players. So that's rising up their salary, their potential salary. If you acquire Joe Ryan, you could sign him to a contract extension, and that's going to be way cheaper than a Framber or a Ranger or a Zach Gallen potentially, because you're not competing with anybody. You're just discussing it purely with Joe Ryan. There's no competition. Now, I don't know if he's going to want to sign a contract extension, but that's just another element to consider. So I think everything just makes too much sense for them not to at least, at the very least, listen to trade offers and see what happens.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think if the Twins, again, if they don't really like engage or at least try to do it, it just makes you wonder. Like they just changed their ownership structure. You know, ideally, you want to get back into being a competitive team again. that's really challenging, for the division and everything, or at least for the playoffs. Um, we were just talking about the Royals getting better. You know, I mean, yeah, like you said, Guardians aren't, the best hitting team, but they have made the playoffs last couple of seasons. Tigers almost got to the ALCS. They were this close. They got to like what was it, 16 innings against the Mariners in Game 5. It was ridiculous. Um,
Absurd.
so and yeah, the Tigers might trade Scooble, but as of now, they still have him, right? So you still got to deal with that. Um,
Yep.
I just don't know. It's like you changed your owners, cool. But if you're not gonna make any big moves, it's like, what do you expect? Like the Twins, the thing with their ownership thing is I was writing about they were or $500 million in debt, or kind of based on how they had low attendance over the past few years. They didn't make the playoffs in 2023. COVID hurt them. The fans couldn't go to the games. So it's like, all right, you want to sell more tickets, you want to build a competitive team, right? So you can't do that without like taking some big swings and making some big moves. It might be a risk, but you're trying to make money for your business, you're trying to win. It's like, yeah, I don't know how you can expect to change things. And this goes to again like our conversation last week. A lot of owners can be complacent. I hope the new owners that come in aren't going to be complacent right away, but who knows? Like, do you care about just saving some pennies or do you want to like really go for it?
Yeah, no, I mean, you gotta try to do something, and you gotta pick a direction, whether it's trying to win or rebuilding. Don't just be that middle team. We've seen teams like the Angels; they're a great example. They haven't fully rebuilt their team, but they also haven't contended. You got to pick a side because then you're just in the middle. You're maybe around 500 if you're lucky. Maybe you're below 500, but you're not the worst team, so you're not getting the best draft picks. The Twins got to pick an angle, pick a side, and go with it.
Yeah, it's, I think the AL Central, it's kind of like we were talking about the AL East last week. I think the AL Central is showing you like which of these kind of small market teams are taking it serious. Like for the AL East, we were talking about Baltimore, not the smallest market, but not that big either. Kind of in the middle. Kansas City, definitely not a big market. They're being aggressive. You know, uh, Tigers and Guardians, they're definitely taking it seriously. I mean, they still have like Guardians have Jose Ramirez, Stephen Kwan. They've got good pitching. Tigers, we're not sure what's going to happen with Scooble. It doesn't seem like they want to give him a big money deal to resign, which I disagree with, but they're still trying their best to build a competitive team. They've added a couple guys this offseason too. So even the White Sox got Murakami, right? So I mean, the White
Yeah.
Sox are the worst team in the sport, and even they made a move, and so it's like it's interesting. Like why would the Twins not try to get that guy, Or maybe they did, but I mean, he only signed a 2-year, $24 million deal. Maybe you think he strikes out too much or whatever, but I mean, you gotta try, right? And so that's what makes me wonder, So we'll see how it plays out, but wanted to pivot also staying on, Scooble. He's going to be on Team USA for the World Baseball Classic. Um, Obviously USA lost
Yep.
last time around with that crazy cinematic ending with Ohtani striking out Mike Trout. And then obviously Ohtani ended up leaving Trout to go to the Dodgers, so it kind of burned him twice. But this roster is pretty fascinating. I mean, you got Cal Raleigh, Aaron Judge, both of the MVP finalists, and obviously Judge won, but you got Gunnar Henderson, Bobby Witt, again on the Royals, Pete Crow Armstrong, a ton of guys. What's your read on this roster? Like, I mean, what do you think the USA, can get done in this World Baseball Classic?
Well, we talk about in sports, we talk about the 1992 Dream Team, right? This pitching rotation is absolutely electric. And you talk about Paul Skeens and Tarek Skubal leading the way. That's your Michael Jordan, LeBron James, like the two best players or best pitchers in the sport right now are the guys in this rotation. It's incredible. Then you got Joe Ryan, who we just talked about,
Right.
great pitcher. Nolan McLean and Matthew Boyd, heck of a rotation. The lineup's great as well, like you mentioned. Judge, Bobby Witt, all these superstars. Um, my thoughts on like I said, like this might be their dream team. This might be one of the best WBC rosters ever constructed. And if they don't win the WBC this year, which I know there's a lot of other good teams, Dominican Republic, Japan, if you don't win the WBC this year, that's going to be considered a failure because you build this kind of team, like you got to win.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they almost did it last time, right? And last time like you had guys like Trout, like all-time greats. I think this team, you've got all-time greats like Judge, and I mean, um, I think that this team though is a lot of it is kind of like the newer talent, right? Like Skeens, for example, like you mentioned, Bobby Witt is still a younger guy. PCA, right? Corbin Carroll is still like a newer guy. So I think that this team is a little bit like more on the younger dynamic side, but you still have got your top end talent too. So I think it's kind of like a good balance. Mason Miller's another example. Absolutely disgusting stuff out of the bullpen. Like he's just he's one of my favorite pitchers to watch. His stuff is like scary good. Like I'm pretty sure he's hit like 103 before. Like he's unbelievable. Um, so I think that yeah, I agree. There's no excuse. I mean, obviously, yeah, DR, Japan, other teams are going to be really good. But I think that this team has to at least be back in the final. If you face Japan again, if it's a rematch, of course Japan is stacked with Otani and the crew, but I mean, you've got again, Aaron Judge is the best hitter in baseball. Skubal and Skeens are the best pitchers. So that alone gives you quite a bit, and then you've got your other guys to fill everything out. I mean, Gunnar Henderson's another young star, right? Um, I think that the athleticism is there, the speed, the youth, combined with experience. I think they did a good job crafting the balance. Now we just gotta see it play out. We know that baseball can be tricky with translating on paper to the field, but I think the ingredients are there.
Yeah, and I think the biggest difference, it is the pitching. I mean, the offense was pretty good last time as well. And credit to Mark DeRosa. I'm sure he's made an effort to try to reach out to these younger pitchers and be like, hey, we want to win and we want you guys. And I'm also interested to see if DeRosa ends up getting a manager job in MLB at some point, but that's a conversation for a different time. But looking at, just the rotation difference, like last year's WBC compared to this, it is drastically different. And it's Skubal and Skeens, they're the best pitchers in baseball right now. I don't think it's you can really even argue that. Like those two guys are so dang good. And last year or last time, I think it was 2023, it just wasn't the same. So the pitching's going to lead the way. The offense with Judge is going to step up, and I expect them to win. Can anything happen? Sure. Shohei Ohtani, he can lead Japan, but USA is in the driver's seat. I think heading into this WBC.
Yeah, it's I think last time like they wanted to win, but this time they're going all in, like they're taking it really seriously. And part of the issue is like, teams don't want their guys to get hurt when they're not, playing for their MLB teams. But
Yeah.
I think this is like again, when it comes to world competition, it's kind of a special occasion. So I think they make exceptions, right? Like with soccer, that's how it's always been, right? They've like clubs have to accept that guys might get hurt in the World Cup and stuff like that because it's the World Cup. Like it's the biggest sporting event in the world. The World Baseball Classic, it's like, it's you're putting the game on the world stage, right? It's a magical thing to have like international competition. So, as a favor to the sport, you got to kind of have put your best foot forward. Yeah, you're risking injury, but it's also a treat for the global game, right? You're trying to, maintain it as a global force. So I think that, like you said, the pitching is the difference. I mean, you have the two best starters, Mason Miller, one of my favorite relief pitchers. There's, and it's a couple of the pitchers are like not, I would say, some of the best, like Clay Holmes and like David Bednar. Those are a couple of guys like, there's better options, but you can't get everybody, right? I guess, not everybody is healthy or ready or whatever the case may be, but even just those guys that are just so good that you can lean on. Like I have full faith in Skubal, Skeens, Mason Miller, Joe Ryan, even, and then I mean you got Rowley and Judge in the lineup and Bobby Witt. I mean that's just like a ridiculous amount of talent. So I'm excited that they're really taking it seriously and they're trying their best to win it all because I think, right, like at the end of the day, like you're the USA, like you want to kind of show your dominance and be like, hey, baseball is still our game, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. But it is also really cool though to see these other countries like becoming so good at baseball. Like the Dominican Republic, they have so many superstars, and Team Japan, they just find ways to win. They have the greatest player potentially ever in Otani. So I like the competition, but you're right. Like USA needs to step up and say, hey, we're still the baseball team to beat. Let's see what you got.
Yeah, it's yeah, like it's like of course you want everyone else to be good. Like you don't want the USA to be the only good team, right? I think that was the issue like for a while and honestly with basketball because like France is now becoming like a powerhouse, but back in the day it was mostly just the United States that was good at basketball. And now I think you're starting to see it kind of be more diverse, right? You got like a lot of guys that coming out of Europe that are some of the best players in the league and and now with baseball, it's like, yeah, DR's been a powerhouse in baseball for a long time, but like Japan being this good, like, it's kind of amazing. And just, obviously Latin America in general, Cuba, right? Like there's been a lot of great countries, a lot of good depth, outside the United States. But now it's like, okay, US is like, that's good. You guys are good, but now we got to reassert ourselves. So I'm excited to see how it goes down. And I'm just excited to see these guys all play with each other, like outside of the All-Star game, that's just one game. This is like an entire competition tournament. So that's pretty special. As a fan of baseball, there's not much not to like, right?
I'm looking forward to it, man. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think for anybody who is a diehard fan or a casual fan, even if you're not a fan, check it out. You're going to fall in love with it. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch for sure.
Yeah, well, that about does it. Joey, unless you had anything else, but this is episode 2 of a Roundtable Roundup. Thank you guys for showing love, and we'll be back next week with episode 3.
Yep. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and everything. And you guys stay safe. And thanks for checking out the podcast.
Yes, sir. Have a good one, everybody.